Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our weekday text gathering. Today is day 139 in the Circles reading calendar, and we are studying chapter 10, section 4, No Other Laws But God's. This is another short section. It only has 8 paragraphs, but it contains a very powerful idea that is right in the title. There are no other laws but God's, but we certainly cause ourselves and others a lot of suffering by inventing our own laws and binding ourselves to them. As far as announcements are concerned, we were very disappointed yesterday to have to postpone our Reconnecting with God workshop because of Zoom outages and issues that prevented us from seeing each other or seeing Robert's screen. So
they were back up and running 2 hours later.
Yeah, they were back and ready. So we are going to offer that at a later date. We're working on times for that now, but the good news is you can still register at circleofa.org/God. And I guess the bad news is you have to continue to listen to me talk about it when you may have thought that you were over that, because I've been talking about this for weeks. But yeah, there's a lot of very, very exciting things going on here. So thank you for joining us every day. I know I say this a lot, but it just really has been a gift to be with all of you and to get to know you through this time. You've been a light to us, as you've been saying that we've been a light to you. So it's just been an extraordinary experience. And as for the prayer today, I find that I'm in a place today where I'm thinking very deeply about those who are stuck in unhappy homes. I feel personally blessed to have a place and to have food on the table and to have a job that I love and to be in love. And I know that so many aren't so fortunate. And so I've been thinking a lot this morning about those who are stuck in unhappy homes during this quarantine, and children especially, whose situation has become more dire as a result of being trapped with their abusers. So I would like to say a prayer this morning and dedicate it to those who are in this situation. And the prayer is based on lesson 109, I rest in God. So if you would close your eyes, take a deep breath. Me. And let's rest in God together. Dear God, thank you for this day. For this is the day of peace because we rest in you. Open our hearts and minds to the stillness you have promised will carry us through storms and strife, past misery and pain, past loss and death, and onward to the certainty of your love. May we let go of the world for a while and enter into the temple with you. We place our situation in your hands. We place all outcomes in your hands as we slip away from dreams and into stillness. We call upon our holy brothers to join us here in the boundless circle of your peace, in the holy sanctuary where we rest with you. Please take a moment to bless everyone joining in on the call today. Picture us all holding hands, forming a circle of light and love that extends all around the world. Say to everyone in your mind, yours is the rest of truth. In him you have no cares and no concerns, no burdens, no anxiety, no pain, no fear of future, and no past regrets. Now take a moment to receive the love and blessing from all of those who are blessing you right now. We are all wishing you a sacred rest in God. There is no suffering it cannot heal. There is no problem it cannot solve. This is the day of peace. Here we are. Amen.
Amen. That was really nice. Thank you. Oh, I can't share my screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll get used to this eventually. Like never.
There you go.
Okay.
Wait, hold on.
Thanks. Oh,
try it again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Our section is No Other Laws But God's. It's a different title than it is in the FIP, so that title may not sound familiar to you. And I think fundamentally what this section brings up for us is the subject of laws. It's a major topic in the course, one of those topics we should do a podcast about one day.
You beat me to it.
Yeah. We need to think about the concept of laws. If you think about our normal idea of laws, and this is not so much, well, we can start with laws of society, right? Those are laws that basically tell you what you can't do, but they're not binding. You can kind of, break them and just make sure you're not seen or not caught. Physical laws, though, feel different. We're getting some sound leakage there.
Yeah, I had to reclaim hosting privileges to mute.
Oh,
so
do you have it? Do you have them back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you scroll through your screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. If you think about physical laws, they seem like we are bound to them. And they're not, physical laws are not that great. We're so used to them. We are within them for our whole lives and we get accustomed to them. But if you think about their laws, their limits, right? Think about gravity. Gravity is constantly trying to pull you down. You have to work against it. You have to hold your head up. You have to stand erect. And if you aren't careful, you'll take a fall and you can be hurt. You can die from a fall. So physical laws seem like this limitation that's constantly, causing us to work within it or else. In the meantime, the Course talks about laws of God. And like, for instance, the law of cause and effect. Okay, by the law of cause and effect, if we do what the Course says, then there lawfully will be a certain effect. And I think perhaps the clearest example of this is giving and receiving. When the Course says that giving and receiving are the same, obviously what that mainly means is that giving leads to receiving, and it calls that the law of love. But we don't think of that law like we think of physical laws, right? We think, well, maybe I'll give and I won't receive. I'll do my part, but I'm not sure if the rest of it will come to me. And so we just have a strange relationship with these laws. We think physical laws are ironclad and they're like a nasty police force that's always hanging around your living room. You can't get away with anything. And we think the laws of God are kind of squishy and iffy. Giving may lead to receiving, it may not. And what the Course is trying to do with this topic of laws is just turn the whole thing upside down. so that what we call physical laws from the Course's standpoint aren't real laws. They're, what we might call man-made. They're made-up laws. I was watching Beauty and the Beast with my kids the other day, and there was this thing where someone had the plague. It's kind of relevant, and they were sniffing on like a rose or something. They were sniffing a flower, and that was supposed to be medicinal, I think. This is like, I think, the 18th century or something. And you're thinking, in their minds, that was a law, but what a silly law. It's a made-up law, right? No one during this pandemic is sniffing flowers and thinking that's going to protect them or make them better, I assume. So from the Course's standpoint, physical laws are made-up laws, even gravity. And, sometimes I mention this guy, amazing guy, Joseph of Cupertino, who was seen by everyone countless times, including the Pope, people of unimpeachable character and reputation. He was seen levitating, and for lengthy periods. This is not a subjective thing. So for him, the law of gravity was a non-law. At the same time, the Course wants us to open our minds to the idea that God's laws are the only real laws. And that's what today's section is really about. No other laws but God's. So let's go ahead and dive into the points I have here. We are groaning under a long list of laws of sickness and bondage. We think these laws come from God. We assume gravity comes from God. But they actually come from our own worshiping of false gods. And this comes from the previous section. We've imagined that principles like sickness have the power of God. We see then those principles as essentially like gods in their own right. Sickness, if you think about your relationship with the concept of sickness, most of us see sickness as having godlike power. Okay, so I think when the Course talks about the God of sickness, it's talking about how we look at the principle of sickness. We see that principle as wielding godlike power. Okay, and that's how all these laws come into being. The laws that aren't God's laws, we're worshiping principles that ultimately are powerless, but we seem to give them power. Okay, I mean, time and space are just separation. Think about space. Space is here and there. It's separate places. And time, it's separate moments. The physical universe is made of the principle of separation. That principle, therefore, seems to have incredible power. Number two, God's laws are completely different. They are not laws of sickness and bondage. They're laws of freedom. They work only for our good and our protection. There's a line in Lesson 76, I'm under no laws but God's, very similar to this section's title, that says something like God's laws only give. And I think that is something that is so counterintuitive that we have to consciously almost force our minds open to that concept. Imagine laws that are laws in that they hold the power. You can't go against them, but they're laws that, unlike how we think of physical laws, which are limits, they're laws that only give. This first passage says, his are the laws of freedom, but yours are the laws of bondage. I mean, gravity is a law of bondage when you think about it. I mean, we're constantly in bondage to it. I saw this documentary on the history of airplanes the other day, and it was all about like the dream, the age-old human dream of being able to fly. Okay, the laws of God work only for your good. And finally, when you have experienced the protection of God, which is what his laws are for, the making of idols becomes inconceivable. You won't need to make idols out of the things of the world because you have God's protection, and that's enough. So imagine that the real laws are the opposite of how we experience physical laws. They're just there for your protection. They're just there for your good. They're just there for your freedom. It's really almost like it's a complete upside down view of how we think of laws. It would be, it seems too good to be true that the real laws are not limits. They're completely for our good. Okay, number 3. Only God's laws are real laws. All other laws are ultimately powerless. There are no other laws beside his. Everything which is not under them does not exist. All this has never been. Nothing but the laws of God has ever operated. Excuse me. And nothing except his will ever be. So from this standpoint, the realm that we're familiar with that operates according to other laws of bondage, that whole realm is not really there. And if the promise of the Course, and this is kind of inherent in it being a Course in Miracles, right? If we accept this other set of laws, those laws that only give, that only protect, that are only for our good, they become the operative laws in our experience. So imagine your experience is that you're under laws that are just there to protect you, to give to you. They're just there for your good. They're just there for your freedom. Imagine, I mean, what would that be like to walk through life with that experience? I think that's why we're so inspired by the stories of certain saints and spiritual masters where it seems like that's their experience, right? There's stories about Buddha would walk into the forest and the animals would all be at peace with each other for like a certain radius of a mile or something around him. I knew a guy, a spiritual master of sorts back in the 90s. And like when there was a fire he lived in a forest. He'd built a huge house. When there was a fire, the animals came and hung out in his house and on his decks, and it was like the bears and the deer together. So we're inspired when we hear a story of like other laws of freedom, operating someone's experience. And what the Course is saying is that could be our experience if we renounce the other laws and really accept that only God's laws have power. And it's as I said, it's a Course in Miracles. It's expecting that other laws will be operative for us. So that's a whole discussion. But let me go on. Number 4, the miracle worker is one who has renounced false laws and calls on his brothers to do the same. This is paragraph 7. The miracle is the act of a son of God who has laid aside all false gods. And the false gods are those principles that we endow with godlike power, which then gives rise to all the false laws. And who calls on his brothers to do likewise. The miracle, is an act of faith. But it's not the kind of faith you'd think, because it is the recognition that his brother can do it. So who are we having faith in as the miracle worker? We're having faith in our brother, right? Faith that he can renounce the false gods and the false laws. It is a call to the Holy Spirit in his mind, a call to something in him that can bring healing to him. Because the miracle worker has heard him, the Holy Spirit, he strengthens his voice in a sick brother by weakening his brother's belief in sickness, which he does not share. Now, in Course in Miracles circles, we kind of act a lot as if I've got my mind, I'm responsible for my mind, and you if I even grant you a mind, you're responsible for yours. But that's not how the Course talks. And almost as if an answer to those questions, the next line says, the power of one mind can shine into another. So the power of your mind can shine into somebody else's mind. Because all the lamps of God were lit with the same spark. So what this point's saying in this paragraph is that we can renounce those false laws and other laws become operative in our experience, and then we can then transfer that to someone else. There's a contagiousness to this. Finally, point 5, he does that by seeing the divine spark in them. And this takes off from that line about all the lamps of God were lit with the same spark. So a lamp is a mind here. So it's like we're all lamps, and I kind of picture like a hurricane lamp, where there's a candle, and then there's the, sort of the lamp around it, and it throws off these rays of light. So imagine a spark inside a lamp, and then paragraph 8 says, in many, only the spark remains, for the great rays are obscured. This is the first reference in the Course to the great rays. And you get the image. There's the spark, there's the lamp, and then that lamp is throwing off these great rays. And in the Course, the great rays are really, they're vast rays of light that supposedly we're all shining with right now. Okay, so we throw off, our mind's the lamp. We throw off these great rays. And if we had eyes to see, each one of us, we would see each person as emitting these vast rays of light that shine out, as the Course says, to infinity. Can you imagine seeing somebody emitting vast rays of light that just keep going forever? How would they seem? I think they would seem holy, right? It would be impossible to see. I mean, imagine, your worst enemy, and they show up one day and you see these vast rays of light shining out. They would seem holy, whatever they had done in the past. Okay. But God has kept the spark alive, so the rays can never be completely forgotten. If you but see the little spark, you will learn of the greater light, for the rays are there, unseen. So it's like we have more ability to see the spark than the rays. We have to see the spark in them first. And as we see that spark, it's like we'll slowly start to see the rays. And the great rays will come up later as we go through the text. Not a ton of times, but several times. And that's kind of what we see when we're really seeing with vision. We first see the spark, but then we see everyone shining with these great rays. Perceiving the spark will heal. So this connects back to the miracle discussion. But knowing the light will create, and that's only of heaven. Yet in the returning, the little light, the spark, must be acknowledged first. For the separation was a descent from magnitude to littleness. We started out in magnitude, and we shrunk down to littleness. So to reverse that, we start with the little spark and then go from there to the great rays. But the spark is still as pure as the great light, because it is the remaining call of creation. Put all your faith in it, and God himself will answer you. So if we put all our faith in that divine spark in our brothers, God will answer us, and our brother will be healed. Okay, so that's all I have to say. As usual, I've got a little exercise. Do we have any questions
we do.
or comments? Okay.
We do. And
I just want to say I'm thankful that Jackie is not sideways anymore. For a while, your picture was like...
How funny. Robert, I'm intrigued by the first sentence in the first paragraph of this section. Reality can dawn only in an unclouded mind. This line implies that understanding is a gift. And so a gift, like a reward for faith in our brother and giving up our grievances. And I'm just curious as to your thoughts on how much of spiritual evolution is given to us as a reward for our dedication and discipline.
Well, there's a very old debate in world religions about grace versus works. And, it's usually called grace versus self-effort. And in the East, at least in the Eastern traditions that we're more aware of here in the West, there's a lot of focus on self-effort. You meditate for hours and so on. And then in the West, in Christianity, is more focused on grace. And I just think that the Course, it will not accept the validity of the question, because from its standpoint, we do have to put forth a great deal of self-effort to let in the grace that's always knocking at our door. So, the water pressure is always there in the faucet, but we have to turn the faucet on to let the water through. So it really is totally both.
So when it says reality can only dawn in an unclouded mind, it's the effort, it's the work, it's the discipline that we put in to clear the fog, if you will, that
Right.
allows the gift to come in.
Right. Like the sun is there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great image. The sun is there always shining, but you don't see it unless you clear away the clouds.
Okay. So Andrew is asking if you can give a few examples of false gods and whether they're the same as idols.
You know what? I think when I said the making of idols there, I think I was thinking of the later text concept of idols, where it's like things of the world. Here in this chapter, the false gods, which of course are idols, are the same thing, are these principles that we've endowed with power they don't have. Principles like sickness, like bondage. In chapter 11, it's going to be, there's the god of crucifixion. So I think here the idols, they are the false gods, and they are these false principles. Later in the text, idols become, at the end of the text, they become the things of the world that we think will save us and make us happy and complete us. But the word idol is very flexible throughout the Course, and one of its main meanings is our self-image. So you have to realize the word is used differently. You have to look to the context. Something that I kind of forgot just now in talking about this passage here. So
You're just demonstrating what not to do.
right.
It's a
It's very
teaching
helpful.
moment.
Yeah.
So Dick says, can you discuss what we create on earth and in heaven by seeing the spark light in our brother?
Well, from the Course's standpoint, we don't create on earth, only in heaven. But, when we just see the spark, what happens is our brother is healed. And when we see that enough, when we all see it enough, the world is new. We make a healed, happy world, which is the Course's big goal. It's shooting for that moment when everything's absolutely healed and we're all united. No one's mind holds a shred of unforgiveness, and God lifts us all back home.
We have a couple more questions, but just in the interest of time, we should do the exercise and we can take the questions at the end.
Okay. So, because it's a section about renouncing false laws and healing our brothers, thereby, I thought we'd do an exercise in that today. So, if you will, please close your eyes and think of someone you know who is sick or in some kind of bondage. Of course, these days, a lot of people are in the former state. So just choose someone. Or you might choose everyone who's got the virus. Realize that the laws that person is suffering under are ultimately made up laws. The only real laws are God's laws, and they are the laws of freedom. So say to this person, I lay aside all false laws and I call on you to do likewise. I recognize that you can do it. I call to the Holy Spirit in your mind. I see the little spark in you. And I know that the great rays are there unseen. Amen.
Okay,
Okay.
so Peggy is asking, are the great rays actually light or more the light of knowledge? Did I already ask that?
No, no.
Okay.
They're the light of memory.
Yeah, so that question is from Peggy. Sorry.
Okay.
I think I've read it too much and I thought maybe I actually voiced it, but I didn't. So yes.
They're not the light of knowledge, but they aren't physical light, or we'd see them, right? I mean, our eyes receive physical light. So they're another kind of light that we see with what the Course calls the eyes of Christ, or early on it calls the spiritual eye. So, I mean, they could be symbolized by an experience of visual light coming off of somebody, but that visual light would be a symbol for the real light, which is, not visual. But it's not, I mean, knowledge is of heaven. I think of them as rays of holiness, because that's what, I mean, you can't imagine somebody shining with these kind of great rays and not think they're holy. And light's always been associated with holy people, right?
Kathy says, I've wondered about the Course reiteration of the New Testament quote, all things work together for good. Is this on God's level, not on our level of experience?
It's absolutely on our level, but we have to allow his laws to be operative for us. We have to accept that his laws are the real laws, and to the extent we do that, it's like we open the door and let those laws in our house. Until then, we're believing in the other laws, and that's what tends to operate in our house. I think it's more complicated than that. I think even while we're believing in the other laws, God's laws are still at work in some sense. I mean, I think everything that happens to us is absolutely orchestrated for our learning. But I think when we really accept God's laws, we start to see things work differently in our lives.
Do you know anything about Alice Bailey's work, The Lucis Trust?
Very, very little. I mean, you can't have been very long in the spiritual path without, especially, decades ago. But I just could never relate that well. And I don't think these are the same rays.
Okay. Did you see that comment, or have you been asked
No,
that
I,
question
I,
before?
no, I just know that that's like a principal feature of her teaching.
Okay.
Actually, I
Michael,
don't know a lot about her rays. I just know that there's like different colors and they symbolize different things, I believe. And these rays are just holiness. There's no colors. There's no one ray means one thing, one ray means another. I don't want to say her rays are wrong. I just think these are different from what I know.
okay. Michael says, how many laws of God does the Course refer to?
That would be an interesting study. I've never done anything like a study of laws in the Course.
Should do a
So
podcast on it. No, I'm kidding.
yeah.
I'm
Um,
kidding.
so I honestly don't know.
Okay. Well, to be
And
determined,
the
I'm
big
sure.
law for this earth is the law of love. And that's that the love you give is what you receive.
Kay says, why are the Great Rays capitalized in the FIP?
I think they were probably capitalized in Helen's notes. We just tried to reduce the level of capitalization in the CE because it's just not how. I mean, there's the the way it's done these days is just less capitalization. I mean, a lot of Bibles don't even capitalize he in relation to God. So it just felt more like the fashion of the day to do less capitalization. So whenever we could, we took it down. That's all. But I do think it was capitalized in her notes. But she
She
overcapitalized.
overcapitalized, yeah.
Yeah.
Michael asks, when you say to this person, are you suggesting that we say these things out loud or only in our mind? This is about my prayers. And the answer, Michael, is that you can do whatever feels most comfortable to you. You're all muted, so you can say it out loud, or if you prefer to say it in your mind, whatever feels comfortable and powerful to you.
Yeah. And by the way, I do kind of prefer Great Rays capitalized personally.
Why?
It just makes it bigger,
John says, doesn't the person have to accept the healing for the healing to happen? Good question, John.
Yeah, the Course says that if it's given, it will be received, but it may be some time before it's accepted. And I like that. That's language from mainly section 6 in the manual. And I like that receive, like they do receive it right then, but they may not accept it right then, although they will eventually. And I like that picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the idea that something in them does receive it at all times.
Right. And that's the concept, which is a wonderful, beautiful concept we'd ever hear about, but it's the concept of the treasure house in the Course. It's referred to throughout the Course. And the idea is when you give someone a miracle of healing, any kind of miracle, it immediately goes into their treasure house and it's saved for them until they're willing to go in there and get it.
So good. Have you done any articles on the treasure house? Is there anything on the website?
I don't know. I did a whole long
Should.
presentation on it like 15 years ago or more, and I should, because it's one of those things where the Course says this has been referred to throughout the text and workbook.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just a few more questions if you want to do a speed round, because I know we're
Yeah, sure.
well over time, as always.
Sure, yeah.
Paula says, is the aura we see in people or saints part of the Great Rays?
I think the aura we see, if it's a saintly aura of holiness and it's white or something like white, I think that's a symbol of the Great Rays. I think the normal aura that reflects more individual characteristics with its different colors and shape and so on and so forth, that's not reflective of the Great Rays. That's a different thing, I think. And Jesus referred to that with some disdain, actually, in relation to Edgar Cayce and his seeing of auras. So, the Great Rays, they're just pure light, and they say nothing about you individually. They're a reflection not of your personal characteristics, but your characteristics as a son of God or as part of Christ.
Right, because no one's rays are brighter than anyone else's.
Right, and no one's got like
special colors,
awful amounts of red in their
right.
Great Rays, and yeah.
Terry says, "What about how about thing like placebo or nocebo with this lesson?"
I don't know exactly what who is it?
Terry
is getting at, but Terry. But I mean
what is nocebo?
I forget. I've read about it. I mean, the
Terry,
placebo effect is
the
placebo effect is a well-documented effect. No one really understands. I mean, it's accepted, but not really understood. And it's a testimony to the power of the mind,
so
which this section is drawing upon.
Wikipedia says the nocebo effect is said to occur when negative expectations of the patient regarding a treatment cause the treatment to have a more negative effect than it would have otherwise had.
Yeah. So the placebo effect is totally documented, factored into studies, part of the design of studies. And it just shows that the mind has power over the body.
Okay, and Anita says, how can I listen to the recording of this? All of the recordings for the text gatherings can be found at circleofa.org/text gathering. And they're usually posted later in the day. Thanks to Danielle.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle.
And so I guess that is it. So we will see you all back here tomorrow, we hope, as we continue through chapter 10. Thanks so much. And I'll unmute you so we can say goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Emily.
Hi,
Thank you.
Kathy.